Hello and welcome to the Dog-Eared Discourse podcast. Today we are starting a side series of episodes where we each recommend a book that we love to our fellow hosts and all of our listeners. I want to talk about Brandon Sanderson's Kickstarter. He wrote for Secret Novels that finished with 185,000 backers and skyrocketed past their original goal of raising $1 million with an astounding $41 million pledged.
Yeah, that was a lot of money.
Brandon explains that these books are an excellent place to start with his work, and they each are standalone novels and require very little knowledge of anything that he has written before. And these are a great look at the variety that he writes, with the 3 books taking place in the shared universe, the Cosmere, and the 4th, something completely different, which I'm very curious about.
Yeah, I'm grateful that it's going to be a good starting place because I have only read Mistborn and then The Rhythmatist. Those are the only 2 Sanderson novels I read. And it's funny because on the backer kit, it had like, what books have you read? And it gives you a bunch of choices, and one of them's Mistborn only.
Oh,
so apparently
wow.
There's a whole section of his readers that only have read Mistborn, enough to warrant a bullet.
Well, fun fact about the Mistborn trilogy, that was my very first series that I had read that was adult fantasy. And I was like so blown away after reading it. I was like, wow, this is so much more in depth than my like previous books I've read. And there's like full religions and like worlds and magic systems. Like I was like amazed. I was like, I have to keep reading this style because I didn't really know. Like I never really read anything from adult fantasy genre. So yeah, I finished that series, and then that started my obsession with fantasy.
And I just love books. So I backed the project, and then I was like, hey, Dani, I know you like Sanderson. And then she was like, I've already backed it.
Rhythmatist, I for sure have read. That's the one where they draw the circles, right?
Yeah.
That one's a lot of fun, and it's a pretty quick read. I am actually like the one person in the bookosphere, I feel like, who hasn't read the Mistborn series.
We have the first one.
Oh, no. You have good company.
I have the first 3, and I have the next trilogy.
He's coloring a coloring book as we speak. So
Yeah,
It's a word search.
Wait, so you're saying that the books that are coming out soon are set in the same universe as Mistborn, or?
Yeah, he kind of writes like the Marvel universe where there's all these characters and all these stories in their own like sometimes worlds or lands, and then they kind of make sneak peeks and appearances in his other books.
Oh, that is so cool. I love when they're like crossovers and Easter eggs and things like that, where it's like, oh, you might notice that this person is from another book, but only if you've also read that other book. That's kind of like you've gotten in.
Yeah, there is actually in the book that I want to recommend to you guys, it'll talk about in a minute. There is a character that I was super hyped at the very end when I like read it, and I was like, what? Because yeah, it was exactly that. It was an Easter egg, and it was something that I had previously read, and I was like super excited that this was one of the characters that was introduced in this. I was like, I have to keep reading, and then I realized that I couldn't keep reading because it's a standalone right now. So I am like on the edge of my seat waiting for him to write the next one.
Is it going to be a series?
I think he did mention that he was going to continue with it, or it's like in his plans. Brandon Sanderson writes a lot of like extra novels that's not the novels. For instance, for the Stormlight Archive, there's like 4 or 5 books out right now, but there's like 3 or 4 novellas, I think.
When you said he writes a lot, you could have just stopped there.
Yeah.
He writes a lot. On YouTube, he has the class that he teaches on writing.
Oh, okay.
And it's really interesting to see how his brain works. He's like, to be a published author, you only need to publish 1 book every year or 2. And then he just is like, oh, a pandemic happened. Let's put out 4 books. In addition to all the other books I've been publishing.
How do you have so many ideas? I'm in awe. That's incredible.
Well, that's his full-time job.
And he has a system and stuff like that he probably goes through, and he gets all these ideas. I'm jealous of how awesome he is at coming up with new content. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I bet there's a part of it too where it's like as you're writing, especially if you know that you're going to just expand this world as you're writing, you have just little side characters that at first felt like there was just going to be like a shopkeeper or something. And then as you're just like trying to fall asleep, you're just thinking about that shopkeeper and randomly building a whole backstory for him.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, shoot, I've got another book to write.
Yeah.
So we are very excited about this this Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah. So the Kickstarter that we had signed up for were the 4 hardcover books. And so we're going to get those quarterly starting next year. And we're hoping to buddy read them on the podcast and, you know, get on that hype train with everyone else, all the thousands and thousands of people.
They're also releasing digital copies and audiobooks all at the same time.
Right.
So you don't have to read. If you're like Juan and prefer coloring, you can listen to it at the same time.
Yeah, if you released a coloring book, he'd shoot to the top of the list of authors. Right? He would dethrone Shel Silverstein. He would dethrone R.L. Stein.
We haven't told him that Shel Silverstein's not a coloring book. Shh.
The cover is.
Oh my gosh.
They have little drawings. You're
Yeah,
right. You're
yep.
right.
So while we're waiting for those books to arrive next year, sorry, no coloring book, honey. In the meantime, I do have a book recommendation that I want to share with everyone, and it's a Brandon Sanderson book, and it's one I was kind of starting to talk about. It's called Warbreaker. Currently, it is a standalone, and I'm pretty sure in the future there's going to be some other stuff coming out. I'm not sure if it's going to be a novella or another full book or what's going on with it. Hoping for more, though, because I absolutely love this book. I gave it 5 stars, and right now it's my favorite of his books, which is saying a lot, and I feel like people might want to fight me on it, but
She'll throw down.
yeah.
If you want to
I've been
start a
working out.
lively discussion about which Sanderson book is the best, I'm sure there will be no losers.
I mean, we're all in this fandom together, but I felt like this one was a great blend of everything in one. So it was also a mystery. So you're following along and you're on the edge of your seat trying to figure out what's going on. It's set in a kingdom. So there's kings, princesses, and then there's also gods. So there's a crazy magic system too that's going along with this. So I just felt like it was like a great blend of all these genres in one convenient book. All right, so the magic system is very unique. Basically, everybody has one biochromatic breath per person, and then some people collect those from other people.
Go up and steal someone's breath away from them.
So it's not their actual breath,
take their breath
ability.
away.
Yeah, you can take their breath away. It's for the people who are collecting breaths. There's a couple different tiers that they get to where once they reach the heightening is if they hold multiple breaths, they gain certain abilities. So they have perfect pitch, the ability to sense life around them, resistance to disease. And there's various amounts of breath that are required to obtain these abilities. And that one's called the heightening. I think it's the first tier of once you're collecting all these people's breaths. The next one is awakening, and that is to be able to use breaths to bring inanimate objects to life. And it's very useful. There's a bunch of different ways that it's used in this book. In the first chapter, he animates something like straw to go do his bidding.
Chroma breath.
Chroma breath. So then there's the...
Wait. Just out of curiosity, is it you use these breaths to pay for these perks? Or is it each breath might have... You have to kind of one of those machines where you put the coin in and the comes out?
No, you need muscles. So you need a ton of breaths to be able to do a lot of things. So I'm trying to think in the book on one instance where he needed to have a cloak protect him, and it used the rest of his breaths. So then he was a normie.
Okay.
But it took all of his breaths, and then once he's done with that cloak protecting him, he says, I think he says breaths to me, and he touches it and takes his breaths back, and then the cloak falls to the ground and it's not animated anymore.
That's super cool.
And so you need some to do certain things, and obviously the more complicated the thing you want to happen takes more of your breaths. One of the main characters that uses the breath, he's a magic wielder of these biochromatic breaths because he has a bunch. His name is Vasher. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Vasher. Vash the Stampede. I'm just kidding. And that's from Trigun. It's an
Yeah,
anime.
it's one of my favorite animes of all time. He's like the basis for a lot of my D&D characters.
Really?
Yeah.
He's so
That's
cool.
why that name sounded familiar. I must have seen his D&D sheet before.
Because he like starts off all badass and then he just is ridiculous. Like he is a badass, but he has absolutely zero composure. It's great.
Yeah,
I
and
made
feel
him
like
watch
he's-
the first
his mo-
episode a couple days ago, actually.
Yeah, and what I took away from that was the man's motivation is a grumbling tummy. He is always hungry.
I mean,
His blood sugar is low.
that's
That
the
is
best
relatable
reason.
as it gets.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I know. I was like, oh, I've heard that he is a bad. And then you watch and you're like,
Wait a
oh,
second.
it's like he slipped on a banana peel and he like, whew.
You know
Well,
what?
good thing these guys killed each other.
I know we're not on anime recommendations, but what is it? Irresponsible Captain Tyler. That's another really good one.
Oh, I've never heard of that.
Oh yeah, it's really great. He's a homeless dude who decides to join the space fleet, and the moment he walks in, they're like, okay, well, let's give you the test, and so he gets into this little thing that's like an AI VR, and he gets the AI to fall in love with him. And then he wants to leave, so it gets separation anxiety and blows up the facility. And they just kind of sign up paperwork to get rid of him, and he gives him the captain of a ship.
Wow.
that's
He's
like
like a ladies man, but a robot ship ladies man.
He has like unlimited charisma and unlimited luck. Anyway,
So getting back to Vash, not the Stampede, one of the most interesting things about him, besides how he can just wield all of these biochromatic breaths like a madman, is that he has a companion, and his companion is a bloodthirsty sword
Aw.
that can speak to him through his mind and says things like, I killed them all. Aren't you proud of me? I knew you would be impressed.
nice.
And he's
I
definitely...
love a companion.
I do too, especially if it's a sword. It kind of reminded me of the book you guys lent me, The Legend of Eli on Press.
I will
because-
never not recommend that book.
Yeah, that book is great.
So there's 4 main characters, well, 5 including the sword, and he is a fan favorite. So much so that in the Brandon Sanderson Kickstarter, he also has a tier in the Kickstarter where you can get
Like boxes.
like box merchandise
boxes
stuff.
of merch.
He has one just for Nightblood. That's, I think, a letter opener. That's the sword.
Aw.
So you get introduced to the magic system through him. And then you start to get introduced to this god land. It's kind of almost like in Hunger Games, how there's the capital and there's all those super like lavish and loud and fashionista people. Think of that, but they're reawakened people who died doing a heroic deed. So then they got gifted this opportunity to have another life as a reawakened. But if you were reawakened, you are confined to this like Roman Greek style pantheon. You can just lounge about. All of your needs are taken care of. And you really don't have any responsibilities except for to tell prophecies that come to you.
I would tell so many wrong stories.
And be that sort of figure to the public that you are a god and that you are there for them. Now they're immortal because people donate their one breath that they have to them to let them live another week. And so that's kind of how they survive and be immortal but they need people to be giving away their little breaths.
Constant human sacrifice.
Yeah. So another main character, Lightsong, is a returned, and he can't remember his past life at all. He doesn't remember his heroic deed that made him a returned, and he doesn't really fit in with the other gods, and he's actually questioning the whole system of why they need gods and why people are giving away their breaths and stuff like that. So their area, the ruler is the God King, and he has a bunch of breath power. He's like holding in lots of breaths. And you sort of get his side of the story of being a god and what the gods do. And like there starts to be some sort of political intrigue, and all the other gods kind of have their own like little agendas that they have going on. And then in a faraway kingdom, in the mountains. There are the last two main characters, and they are sisters, and they are princesses of this kingdom. And one of the sisters, who's the oldest, is groomed all her life to be wed to the God King, who she's like terrified of, and she has to give him a child, and that's just her life. But she really is responsible with it. Her younger sister doesn't have any responsibilities. She runs around, does whatever she wants. She doesn't really fit in with her little kingdom area because she doesn't like all the rules. And they end up getting switched. She ends up going to wed the God King, and she has absolutely no background in dealing with court politics or even having to deal with marital responsibilities or anything like that. And then it caused some family drama, obviously, and the older sister runs off and tries to, in her eyes, save her younger sister from this non-human being that she needs to wed. And it starts on this huge journey of all these crazy hidden politics, and that's where the mysteries come in, and it's crazy. Like, every single character is so interesting to listen to and like read about, and you just learn so much through each one of their points of view. And yeah, it's one of my favorite books. I definitely recommend it to you guys, and hope you also enjoy it, listeners.
Well, thank you very much for the recommendation. I'm going to give that one a shot.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks for the recommendation.
No problem.